Blatant sorcery. It's not exactly known for being hard. I mean, you can just do stuff like this. But the other day, I was looking at Skyrim mods and thought of a cool video idea. Skyrim, but as realistic as possible. But then I realized I can do that in Blatant Sorcery now. Two very recent mods that have come out are Advanced Health and Damage Systems by Kyojiiin, I don't know, and Survival Mode by Genix. Combining these two could make my game at least somewhat realistic. First, let's go over what those two mods actually do. Advanced Health and Damage Systems adds more in-depth damage systems to both me and the enemies, so we are both at a disadvantage. It adds things like breaks and bleeding to make sure that injuries actually matter. It also adds a stamina bar, which you can see right here. In the base game, you can run and jump indefinitely, so this adds some balance to that. It also adds a weight system. Both what you have in your holsters and in your inventory count towards weight. The more you weigh, the slower you are, and the slower your stamina regenerates. Survival mode adds the two basic survival necessities, food and water. The lower both your food and water are, the lower your max health is. You can drink by filling this canteen that is added to your inventory, and you can fill that canteen by dipping it in water. A link to both of those mods will be in the description. Along with those mods, I added some rules. Since magic isn't, real, I'm not allowed to use any, except for the basic telekinesis just to grab objects, and certain parts of the body crystal. Only the reasonable skills are allowed though. On top of that, it's permadeath. So let's begin. So to begin, I put it on permadeath, and I actually selected the mind crystal and not the body crystal. Why, you may ask? Well, it's because I didn't want to give myself any kind of, starting buff. If I'm going to be able to use that crystal, I want to have to work towards it. When I spawned in, for some reason, I don't know what mod causes this, but my hands were completely invisible. They will return shortly. I used my non-existent hands to grab my first weapon and slash through the very few outlaws that there were. It's not too difficult yet. I saw these apples on the floor and I just had to pick them up because everybody knows that floor apples are the best. When I got home, I put the useless mind crystal in a drawer, never to be seen again. By the time I got to the Barrens, the curse of my invisible hands was broken, and I was kind of thinking I wanted to go for like a two-handed axe brute kind of build. But all the axes there sucked, but I also didn't care, so I bought one anyways. But then I realized that I could go for the falcon, so I did, and I would use that for the time being. Even though the Baron had previously stated that he marked a outpost on my map, there was no outpost, so I went home, and there was still no outpost. So I went back to the Barrens, and suddenly, there was my first outpost. So I clicked on it and entered. I entered the outpost a little nervous, as I wasn't sure if real enemies would actually pose a threat to me. They did not. But then I saw this guy with the bow, and I ran, because I knew that just one stray projectile could easily end the game. One fireball, one lightning bolt, one arrow, anything could mark the end. I proceeded through the dungeon with caution, avoiding sorcerers or bowmen or anything like that, but as you can see, there isn't really much difficulty to be had here. I did get kind of a jump scare though, when after I killed this guy, a woman pointed lightning at me. If I was not holding his body, there's a chance I would have died here. The expressions mod made me feel a little bit bad about stabbing this woman through the arm. So in retaliation to that, I beat that look off of her face. One mod I forgot I had, but actually fits the theme pretty well, is locked doors. It adds locks to the doors. In each room there will be a key to the door that's locked. It'll be on a corpse or on a table somewhere. And it makes sense. Why would they keep all of their most valuable stuff behind a thin unlocked door? All I got out of that chest was a single crystal, which isn't really all that valuable to me because I don't have any crystal I can use it on right now. I killed a couple guys, threw one of those guys into the water, and then got in said water to get my first piece of actual loot. While I was unlocking a door, I realized, oh yeah, I'm playing survival mode. So I finally ate. I continued through the dungeon. I found a completely empty chest, which in my almost 100 hours in 1.0 is the first time that I have ever seen this. I killed some people, as one does in Blatant Sorcery. And then I finally completed my first dungeon. I got some gold, a couple crystals, but no map. I'm not sure if it's just because this is my first dungeon, or it's just because of bad RNG. When I got home, I realized, oh yeah, I have to drink. So I pulled out the canteen for the first time, drank, and filled it up in the salt water, which totally makes sense. I traveled to my next dungeon, and things went pretty much the same as the last one. Kill, 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 narrowly avoid a fireball, kill, 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 making sure to eat and drink in between all of that. And I finally finished my first real dungeon. I got some crystals, some gold, and finally, my first map. I drank and refilled my canteen before I moved on to the next dungeon, which went pretty much exactly the same as the last one. But then I came across something pretty scary. A massive gap that I had to jump on and grab a lantern. Now, if I missed, I would most certainly die. And during this entire playthrough, I had massive stick drift, which sometimes causes my jumps to cancel. So if a jump were to cancel or something else were to go wrong, I would pretty much lose the entire run. But I locked in and was able to grab it, which I'm personally considering a miracle, considering I was spamming the slow-mo button the entire time, expecting to, go slow-mo, and somehow forgetting that I don't have any slow-mo. I continued through the rest of the dungeon without worry, doing the normal stuff, killing, looting, that's all you really can do. And I finally made it to the end and got my second Dalgarian map. Since I've been doing this entire thing in plain clothes, I figured it was finally time to visit the Baron and get myself some armor. Once I got there, I sold all the stuff that I'd gotten from the past 3 dungeons I went to, and looked around. I mainly just wanted pants, boots, and some armor. It took a little bit, but I eventually found a combination that fit my budget. So, as one does, I went to put everything on. And I've never seen it before, but this happened. So, apparently taking off my boots somehow launched my body into the wall with the force of something similar to a sun. Now, I have never seen this happen before, and since it killed me, it was permadeath. But I'm not going to accept that. If I died any other way, I would have gone along with it. It would have been fine. But I've never seen that happen before, and that death, it wasn't realistic. That can't happen. So I used the very unknown technique of going into the game files and editing them to make myself alive again. I almost completely stopped playing and scrapped the video there, but I pulled through, and when I eventually got back to the Barrens, there was nothing on the shelves, no armor. So I had nothing to buy, which means I would have to do the Dalgarian dungeon in the same plain clothes that I have been using for the past 3 dungeons. I started the Dalgarian dungeon with a nervousness and a sour taste in my mouth from what just happened. But I pushed through, and just how beautiful this game can look sometimes made me feel a little bit better. But yeah, I pushed all the way through the Dalgarian dungeon normally, and I finally got to the end. I made sure to eat and drink so I wouldn't be one-shot by any of the golem's attacks. Or at least, hope I wouldn't be one-shot. And then I broke the crystal and dropped down into the arena. Before I woke him up, I wanted to make sure that I knew where every crystal in the arena was. Once I had it pretty mapped out, I walked up towards him and woke him up. And I instantly did a full 360 looking at all crystals to see which one would open up first. I realized that one of the walls connected 2 of the 3 crystals together, so I realized that's more than likely where one's going to open up. And I was lucky enough to have the one closest to me open up first. I instantly ran towards it, and he tried to throw a boulder. But I was again lucky enough to have a pillar right there where I could wait out the boulder. I climbed up the wall with ease, and eventually took enough hits with my falcon to break the crystal. Once he went down, I carefully ran over to him, making sure not to take fall damage, and decided to start breaking the crystals on top of him, as I knew those would be the most difficult. I ran on top of him and hit as many as I could before dismounting and running away. Here's where I actually started feeling the stamina bar. I haven't actually had to run or jump long distances yet, but here I had to. As you can see, here I completely missed this lantern thing because I had no stamina. So I definitely have to keep a better eye on it from now on. I made my way to the second crystal while keeping an eye both on my stamina bar and on Hector. I needed to make sure that he didn't absolutely destroy me with a rock he pulled out of the ground. Once I destroyed it, I carefully made my way over to Hector and destroyed 2 of his crystals. I looked to see where the last crystal was while Hector wailed around like a dumbass, did a little parkour onto this ledge, destroyed the crystal, walked over to Hector, punched his mouth off, and ripped the crystal from his mouth. When I got to the end, the only crystal I could choose was the body crystal, so I went and chose that, obviously. When I got home, I chose 3 perks: Discombobulate, which just staggers enemies when I hit them, Ranged Expertise, which means arrows will pierce through enemies easier, and Skulker, which means I can sneak better. I chose these 3 because it's realistic to think that after a while you get better at these things. I returned to the Barrens and finally got those boots, pants, and a shirt that I wanted to get originally. And because of the stuff I got from the Dalgarian Ruins, I was able to get gloves, shoulder pads, and a cloak, which is a cool mod that I actually forgot I had installed. By the time I got to the next dungeon, I was kinda tired of using the falcon. So, I threw it to the ground and used what I had. My fists. I saw this bow just kind of laying on the ground, and I haven't really used many ranged weapons in Crystal Hunt before, so I figured I'd give it a try. Why not? But it didn't work whatsoever, so I just went back to what I was doing. I finished the dungeon and got the standard loot, the gold, the crystal, the map, whatever. When I went home, I went straight to the Barrens, originally just for some food. But I saw these 2 daggers looked pretty interesting, so I bought them. This time around, I was able to enter the Dalgarian dungeon pretty confidently. I had new daggers and I haven't really been hurt much yet. But that was all very quickly shattered when I came up to this ledge, jumped, but it didn't jump and I almost died. I was just barely able to grapple onto the ledge, and looking down, that would have been certain death. Oh yeah, and I think getting these daggers was a pretty good idea. I made it to the end with relative ease, and I used the same method that I did last time. Watching for the crystals and making sure to keep an eye on both my stamina and the ledges as to avoid falling to my death. Something I noticed this time is that Hector had many more crystals. The amount of crystals he has will continue to increase as time goes on. But I did it pretty easily, punched his mouth, took the crystal out of his mouth, and went home. When I got home, I combined the 2 body crystals I had, but I was only really able to get 1 perk this time, which was Wrestler, because that's the only one that really felt realistic. Now after that, I did run into a bit of a problem. I took a break in between recording, but when I got back, I started the game, started recording, everything was going well. I went through all 3 dungeons and the boss with relative ease, but when I took off my headset and tried to stop the recording, I couldn't stop it, and that's because it was already stopped. And that's because I apparently ran out of space at some point. Now running out of space, it both stopped the video and corrupted it. So I looked online for ways to fix this, and found this site that said, oh, it'll fix your file. That 25-minute recording is not worth $50. So I'm just gonna have to go without it. But in short, what I did was I got the Juggernaut perk and the Intimidation perk, as those feel pretty realistic. And I got this super cool crossbow that I used and got pretty good at during the entirety of the recording I lost. So it sucks I don't have access to that, but hey, here we are. I still got the rest of the video. I entered these next dungeons doing the same thing I had been doing for the past 3. Absolutely doming people with the crossbow. came across one of these jumps, made it to the lantern, but actually almost fell by hitting the pole, so too much jump or too little jump could very easily kill me. Though the crossbow wasn't always optimal. I also learned that apparently when you kill chickens, there's a chance that they drop eggs. And then I made it to the end of the next Stelgarian dungeon. During the last golem fight, I noticed that there was actually quite a big jump in power compared to the last two. So this one, I don't imagine is going to be any different. It started off pretty smoothly. To begin, I climbed to the crystal that's behind the golem, hoping that that would open up first. But it didn't. On the bright side, the one that did open up wasn't the one that was farthest away, so I was able to easily make it and break the crystal. I started breaking the crystal on the golem's back, as I knew that would be the hardest to get while he's up, but I was also able to snag one on the leg. The next one to open up was the one that I was at first, but before I could get it, the golem shot this giant laser beam at me that I had to go out of my way to avoid. He did hit me a little, but I was able to avoid the rest of it. I broke the big crystal and was actually able to snag 3 of the crystals on him. Unfortunately, the next big crystal was at the hardest point to get to in the arena. Getting there, I made sure to keep an eye both on my stamina and the golem, as just one more of those lightning bolts could easily be a game ender. Here, he shot a lightning bolt, but I was able to avoid it. And then when I tried to climb this ladder, he almost threw a boulder at me, but I was able to move fast enough to avoid it. I took a break behind this pillar to eat and drink, so that if he did hit me, I would have a high max health. I broke the crystal, got down, and was able to break only one of his crystals before he got up. He wouldn't go down anymore, so I had to climb on him to make sure I got that last one. I finally got that crystal, and I punched his mouth off and took out the prismatic crystal, and since I couldn't upgrade the body skill tree anymore, I figured I'd get the mind crystal, because I remembered that their cross perk actually was realistic, until I realized that using the mind crystal at all would give me access to slow time. I also seem to have forgotten that I started with a mind crystal and already had one in my draw, so when I got home, this mind crystal made its home with the other one. I went over the Barrens to see what he had after that, and he had some good stuff, but I saw 2 things I really wanted. Finally, I was able to get that axe, and I saw another quiver with better arrows. Getting those 2 things depleted me of most of my money, so I could really only get 1 piece of armor, which I chose to be a helmet since I didn't have one. I used the little money I had left to purchase some apples, and then I filled my canteens, and then I moved on to the next dungeon. Over the next few dungeons, I used a mix of both the crossbow and the axe. I used the crossbow in open spaces or long hallways to avoid contact with archers, sorcerers, and giant metal objects swinging in my face. When I was in an enclosed space, or they got too close, I would start swinging my axe. And as you can see, both of them work very well. Here, I started noticing a stark influx of sorcerers. I mean, just on this bridge, there are 3 sorcerers. This means I have to pay much more attention to what's going on, as to avoid me looking one direction and a fireball coming from the other. Here, I got a massive jump scare. There was a guy on one side and a woman with lightning on the other. Now my axe absorbed a lot of the lightning, but it didn't absorb it all, so I did take some damage. But as soon as she was done, she wasn't much of an issue, and he got pretty scared. I had to choose between two outlaw dungeons, so I chose the harder one, but even then, going against these guys after going against all the Raiden soldiers, I could definitely feel how far I've come. This woman here just kinda accepts her fate, I guess. These past 3 dungeons gave me some money to work with, and I desperately needed new armor before I went into that Dalgarian dungeon. So, I checked out what the Baron had. He had only 2 things that were really worth buying and within my budget. I bought a leather chest piece and a metal glove. I'm all mismatched right now. It doesn't look all that good, but it's all I could afford, and the armor actually isn't that bad. This Dalgarian dungeon is much more interesting than the last few. For one, I have weapons and armor that I actually enjoy using. And 2, this is my first time this save going up against the Eye. They have the strongest weapons and armor, so it's definitely interesting. And I almost killed myself on this jump once again. I finally faced off against my first Eye Knight, and it's not really that difficult. And that's because of the axe. The axe is both a blunt and a sharp weapon, so it's useful in pretty much every single situation. I can easily knock this guy down and beat him to death, or get through his armor. Whichever way I choose, I can easily kill him with the axe. This guy shooting the fire arrows at me also explains why the crossbow is extremely important. If I tried to get up there with the axe, there's a good chance that he would hit me with that. Now, it probably wouldn't kill me, but it'd still be pretty devastating. The crossbow allows me to keep my distance and stay behind cover while I kill him. I knew that for the first time, the boss was going to feel like an actual boss, so I made sure to drink before I went in to make sure my max health was as high as it possibly could be. I swung at the crystal and dropped down. With this new quiver, I could hold triple the amount of arrows that I could hold before, which means missing wasn't that big of a deal. So I started using it to deal with the crystals. Now, as you can see, if I didn't, maybe this guy would have hit me with that giant fireball that went behind him. This time around, I couldn't even get one crystal off before he stood up. This is when I fully realized how bad it would be. By the time he stood up, I was just barely able to get one of his crystals. He started swinging me around, and I was able to get one more. And I just barely got that one. Once I hopped off, I was able to get the 2 on his legs. I noticed that I need to take risks while he's in the attack animations, or I won't be able to do it at all. Each of the big crystals takes 2 hits to destroy, and I perfectly got this one in 2 shots. I jumped on him, and here's where I noticed a massive weakness of the axe. It's long and heavy, which means it's very awkward to handle. So if I need to hit something that's small or something that's far away, there's a chance I won't be able to hit it at all, or I won't be able to come down with enough force to destroy it. This is where something like the Falcon would come in handy, and I will keep that noted for later. It only took 2 shots for me to take down the big crystal. As soon as I did, I took out my axe and turned around. He had 3 crystals left, and I needed to get all of them. The axe wasn't working, but it's all I had. I wasn't able to get a single one while he was down, and with the attacks he's doing, I need to make sure not to get caught in any of them. As you can see, that fire attack would have been absolutely devastating. I climbed on him and got thrown around a couple more times until I was finally able to get one. I jumped around and avoided a bunch of attacks until I finally got another one, which means there was only one more left. I jumped and slashed and jabbed around with the axe. I just couldn't either reach it or hit it with enough force. As I said, I kept missing his crystal and avoiding his attacks for a solid minute. But finally, I got one. I punched his mouth, took a crystal, and just chose the body one since it didn't really matter anymore. When I got home, it was the eye invasion, which I was super excited for. And then my game crashed. This has happened a bunch of times through this video. I've had to restart so many dungeons, but here it was definitely most annoying. I think my computer's just starting to lag behind, but if you want to help me get a new one, you can subscribe. Anyways, once I loaded back in, I was right where I left off. And there wasn't much to do but slaughter these guys. Once they were all dead, I put down my weapons and grabbed a bunch of their weapons, because something I learned is that if you holster the weapons here, you can actually sell them. So that's what I did. I didn't have a lot of money, but selling those weapons gave me enough to get my hands on some armor. Eventually, after a lot of browsing, I chose a glove for my other hand and some pants. But I bought the glove for the wrong hand, so I went and sold that glove and bought the correct glove. I had enough money to get apples, eggs, and another canteen, which was definitely something I needed. I ate some, and then I went and filled up the canteen, and I started on my next dungeon. I'm pretty into the flow of things by now. I can dime somebody from any distance with a crossbow. I know which points to hit on armor to deal the most damage. This video hasn't been as difficult as I thought it was going to be. It's definitely much harder than normal crystal hunt, but it's not all that bad. Once I got my final map piece, and before I visited the last Elgarian dungeon, I decided to make one more trip to the Barrens. I only needed two things, some boots and some food, which is what I bought. I put the food in my inventory, I filled up my canteens, and traveled to my last dungeon. This was my 6th time doing this. By now, I know exactly what to do. Shoot crystals, run to big guy, hit crystals off big guy, run away, rinse, and repeat. I did that until I downed him. I ripped the crystal out of his mouth and just chose body, even though it didn't matter. When I got home, the gate opened up and I teleported to the tower. Thank you for watching this entire 30-minute video. This is the longest video I've ever made, and definitely the most work I've ever put into a video. I haven't been uploading for the past few months, so I wanted to do a couple big videos coming back into YouTube. If you made it through all 30 minutes, then I'm guessing you enjoyed it. You can show that by liking, subscribing, whatever. If it does well, maybe I'll do more of these. And again, thanks for watching.